I'm Kamerie Gibson. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, the podcast. I believe that one of the most precious gifts you can share with someone is your story. Pain has purpose and stories can change lives. Your journey to become more inspired and transformed by the lives of those around us starts now. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Kamerie Gibson Show, where we talk about transforming our pain into power. And today I have a guest with me here today. His name is Justin. Justin, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Justin Blakely. Born and raised in Compton, California. Son of a mother who has been teaching for over 30 years between Compton Unified and Inglewood Unified School District, so in the community. A son to a father who retired after 30 years as well as being a Compton police officer. And someone who's very just active in the community. Really want to be able to provide any resources I can, just be able to be one of those people that really help move the needle forward. And really my purpose is really to impact our next generation of future leaders. And so I'm excited to be here today and ready to get into it.
I love that. Thank you for giving that. It really helps me to think about Compton in the way I previously thought about it in. And I always hear that Compton is probably one of the last Black communities that still has that familial community bond that I grew up in South Central. So I grew up on the east side and the west side. More so like in the lower numbers, like the 50s. And I grew up near like Arlington, like the 20s area. Anyways, my dad grew up in the Avs and whatnot growing up. But it just seemed like Compton is just a lot more close-knitted. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I actually ran for city council back in 2019. I'm really active in politics and, the public policy world. And one of the things when I ran in the city of Compton back in 2019, one thing I always recognize is that Compton is definitely a community within a community. And so what I mean by that is that you can't go anywhere in the city and not be asked, okay, so who okay, your people over here, blah, 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 like that. I remember when I was running and I never met this person in my life, but they're like, Blakely, like, man, like that name sounds familiar. Like, oh, your dad was a former police officer. Yeah, me and my family grew up with him, or not grew up, but, knew him very well. It's my mom, but, so Compton is that. And I think that that's one of the prides of why Compton is still, there's all types of stuff going on, but I always like to tell people, as Compton is viewed in this negative light, people in the city, although we have a myriad of issues going on, I argue that those same issues are going on everywhere. And it's kind of unfair to give Compton just that negative image when there's so many great things happening. And I think it's really remaining that way because of the communal aspect of it. Once you're in the community, once, you're known, once people know your family, you grew up there, people are going to always keep you, watch your back, keep you supported, and make sure that, you're recognized as one of them. And, whether it's blood or not. And so that's one of the beautiful things about Compton. And, as we kind of move forward, in terms of how we address things in the Black community, how we address things in our broader community, I think we should take a page out of Compton and those beautiful things that Compton has to offer when it comes to community, because Compton is definitely foundational in that.
I love that. Thank you for making that known about Compton. I also wanted to say that as an outsider, Kendrick Lamar, I feel like, does a good job of illustrating that unity as well in his songs. I'm not sure if you're a fan of Kendrick Lamar, but
A huge fan.
Would you say that he accurately represents your city?
Absolutely. Yeah. Kendrick, I mean, it's so many artists. And that's one of the other beautiful things about Compton. I mean, it's so many people who are artists that come out of Compton. But, that's not just it. We have people. I remember I was at Compton High doing some work there, and, I was looking at people a part of the STEM programs and stuff that's going on. And so, I mean, it's just so many great things. But to go back to the question of Kendrick, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and what I love about Kendrick and how he's so eloquently being able to be so poetic with it is that, you know, he really creates this imagery of there is so many things going on in the city that are negative, all these things like that, but it's what really builds you. And it really, you know, and I won't even say it necessarily toughens you up, but, you know, it puts you in a place where once you go out of your community, talking about Compton, you know how to be able to be better prepared for the world that which you face. And so, you know, I think that Kendrick is a absolutely perfect representation. He's always putting on for the city. But, you know, also recognize there's many others, artists, people in, you know, different other fields that also do the same.
Compton, for sure. Have you seen the series Them?
I don't believe so.
It's a historical timepiece, and it's pretty
Hmm.
much talking about a Great Migration story. You
Hmm.
know, when African Americans came from the South, in like hundreds of numbers because they were,
Yeah.
you know, escaping racism, terrorism, and
Yeah.
looking for opportunity. But then pretty much it's focusing on a black family, but this black family came from somewhere in the South. I can't
Mhm.
believe it. I can't remember if it's North Carolina or somewhere like Georgia, but
Right.
they end up coming to Compton, of all cities, to settle. And Compton at the time, I believe this was the 50s, maybe, no, probably even before then, but
Hmm.
it was predominantly white. I'm sure you know the
Yep.
history as well.
Absolutely.
And they were one of the, maybe the only black family on that block to come over
Hmm.
there. And what the black father didn't know upon him arriving is that the white woman had sold him a house, but in the documentation to sell the house, they said don't sell it to a black person. But she kind
Hmm.
of like overrode that or something. So
Hmm.
he and his family ended up getting terrorized like throughout the series and by white people and having to fight back, um, to stake their claim. Like this is our home too. We're gonna be here. What stories do you know about like when it comes to your family maybe coming from the South? I'm assuming they're coming from the South, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to even comment on Compton and its history, I mean, Compton, just like many other cities, including like a city of Inglewood, for example, or something, they were not even predominant, they were majority white. You know what I mean? Like it was all white, you know, at one point. And, you know, going back to the city of Compton, I remember seeing in a historical archive, you know, it was called, you know, America City, or I forgot what the terminology was, but, you know, I mean, the best city in America, one of those type of things, you know, kind of giving you this imagery of it's, you know, all white, the white picket fences and all that stuff. And that's what Compton used to be. And, you know, and you kind of see remnants of this still today. You know, you got like the Compton Cowboys and stuff, different things going on. But Compton is a very agricultural city too, and it's so interesting that, you know, when you really know about the history of Compton, you see that it's gone through many phases and it's evolved. The Compton that we know from the 40s and 50s is very different from the Compton we know in the 1980s and 90s, right? Where it was then deemed the murder capital of the world because of the many historical exacerbated issues of racism and police brutality and things going on, you know, and rappers and artists of that time were not glorifying it, but really showing the imagery of what's going on in the city and why aren't we being able to get those resources? Why are we deemed so negatively? And then you see the Compton today where, I mean, we're still fighting and dealing with many things going on. But I always like to tell people, as many things that are going on in the city, it's a very quiet, nice place to live. You know, I mean, I feel I still live there today. I mean, I feel protected. I mean, again, once you're in the community and once you're someone who's, you know, someone who's like rooted in it, you know, you don't look at it the same way that people do externally. And so, you know, for me and my family was born and raised in Chicago. At least my mom's side. My dad's side came from Flint, Michigan, more specifically. And you know, they migrated. So that my family's the Midwest migrators back at the time when actually the Watts Rebellion happened, and my grandmother moved here and my grandfather, and they, moved to Watts. And then later on, as time goes on, 10, 20, 30 years later, then my mom and my dad actually bought a house in Compton. And so that's kind of just a quick little trajectory of how my story went. But I mean, it's something that shows that when people that look like us move into cities and neighborhoods, so on and so forth, we really see what we call white flight. And, with those who are our counterparts, white people who move out of these same cities that we're starting to move into, they take all the businesses, they take all the different resources out, the jobs. And so you look at a Watts, you look at a Compton, you go down Compton Boulevard right now. Although, yes, you will see, different businesses are, still hanging on, doing good. But Compton, at one point, you go down Compton Boulevard, like you going down the street right there. Like, you got all these businesses, you got people flourishing, small businesses just thriving. And it was just so much greater. Compton had a theater. It was just so much going on. The Compton Swap Meet at one point used to be really live and active. But again, when resources aren't allocated to our communities, then we see what happens. And so that's now I kind of took it a couple different places, but I wanted to kind of give that context too.
Yeah, take me on a journey. Show world. I want to see what it's like, because a lot of us don't know. Like you said, it's when you're rooted somewhere, how it looks externally is going to be a lot different. For people.
Very true.
So thank you for that. Thank you for giving us that history. I know growing up in South Central, a lot has changed. I graduated from high school maybe 7 years ago, so like 2015. Mm-hmm. But even then, I remember seeing the changes happening as far as gentrification and people moving into my community. And just like you, I remember maybe it wasn't as great as when our grandparents were going to school and stuff, but I remember my grandmother taking me to Leimert Park, because that's the community I live in, and the Crenshaw Mall or to the Magic Johnson Theater, I just felt like we weren't doing as bad as we're doing now. When I go out into my community as well, because I'm in South Central, just like you said, you're in your community too. It just looks so. It looks so dead. It looks so suffocated and depleted, and just like a dumpster. Like it's like a hub for the disenfranchised and the reject, the people that no one wants to talk to, just want to pass through it and get through there.
Yeah. What
do you have to say about the changes that's currently happening in and around your city?
Yeah, I mean, what I say is that I think I kind of look at it from a standpoint of we just came. Well, I won't say we just came out of, but we're currently still in a pandemic. Believe it or not, people are still getting sick. But I only bring that up. And I'll even go a little further, but I'll start with the past 2 years, is that the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, and the equity and wealth gap just further, separated each other. And as that was happening, we already had a terrible system of, things going on in the homelessness community, mental health, the fact that people can't find jobs, recidivism rates, in terms of in mass incarceration systems. Like, our system is broken across all different functions and channels. And so what I think is also happening is that, I think the era of social media and us being at home and us being able to really broadcast much more than I think we were before. And I think a lot of people are tuning in a little bit more deeper, because I'll make the argument that the same things that you just brought up, I would say we've been seeing this for 5-10, I say 5-10 years, because just like you, although I feel like I'm a young person, just like you, I got called an old head, and I graduated high school in 2014, but so I try to find my niche, but but like the point I'm making is that, again, this stuff has been going on, but I do believe that these issues are getting further exacerbated, and I think that if we don't do something now, it will get worse, and we'll be at a point where, those who are, and actually, I won't say we aren't there. I won't say that we aren't going to get there. I think we're there now, where you see, you're going out in broad daylight, and you may potentially get robbed. You may get killed, rest in peace to PNB Rock, the rap artist that just got killed, at Roscoe's, you know what I mean? Like, people are desperate, but people need the resources. And, you can't, dangle money or resources in front of people and then remove them quickly, but not give them any other opportunities and any other supports, you know what I mean? And so, I think what's going on right now is something that, if we don't address it, is going to continue to get worse. And I think it's going to be until it starts to attack the what I consider those 1%, those who are the most wealthy, is that's when people are going to really start to wake up and try to address the needs of our marginalized and most impacted by systemic and overt racism and white supremacy. It's not going to be till then when we're going to actually start to see the changes, unfortunately.
My favorite book, Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, he pretty much talks about there has to be an assault on the establishment in order for true change to occur for us, in order for us to truly be free. But that's for whoever wants to read that book. But just to go back onto PNB Rock's passing, rest in peace to him and prayers to his family, like you said earlier, for sure. That's literally like 5 minutes away from where I live. So my first partner, I was 12 and he was 13 when I first met him. He actually was murdered around the same area. So I'm pretty familiar with this community, this area, and it's no joke, we saw with him being killed. But there's been a lot of discussion about how things should have went on and how he should have carried himself. What would you say would be the most appropriate conclusion when it comes to that news story for people who want to just, have an opinion on it?
Yeah, first of all, I want to kind of use this platform to say we cannot blame his girlfriend for that. And she's in my prayers the most, and his daughter. I believe he has a daughter, because that's just very unfair to, and I get it. I grew up in, I ain't gonna say I grew up in the streets, but I'm very street smart, right? I know how to survive in LA and in all of South LA, so to speak. But and I get the whole idea of, don't post location, blah blah blah. I get it, but it's really unfair to kind of put that on her. But what I will say is that in this era of time, like I kind of was touching on a little bit earlier, is that, a person like me or anybody, I'm not going outside flashing anything, because again, I know people are in a time where they are literally deciding whether they're going to eat today, pay their rent, or in my field, pay for childcare. It's so many things going on. And so I don't want to put the blame. Actually, the blame doesn't need to go on the girlfriend. We absolutely should blame the suspect or whoever was involved. But really, this is a larger issue that needs to be tackled from the broader perspective of this is what happens when we are living in a broken system. If we had resources in our community, if there were the amount of ample resources over there on Manchester, Maine, in that community right there, people wouldn't have a need to do those type of things, right? If you could find the murderer, put them in prison, but say, again, I hope they, do, what they need to do. But again, how do you rehabilitate a person in that type of setting? There's no restorative justice. So then you just have a continuous cycle of things. And so, so as I say, kind of talking on the matter, I think, one, we shouldn't blame the girlfriend. That wasn't her fault. Two, I wouldn't, I just in general, just knowing and being street smart, I try to carry as less of many valuables on me as I can. Anything I carry is something I can be replaced. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to take my car, my phone, hey, go ahead and have it. I'll replace it. But and then also, lastly, we have to look at the issue not from the perspective of oh, just hey, black on black crime, and I really I have a problem with that. Just being a scholar in Africana studies, graduating from Dominguez Hills, because black on black crime isn't a thing. It's wherever your community is who you're going to immediately target. So let's stop that right now. But again, it's a larger issue of how are we addressing systems that are broken, and we cannot be able to move forward. This will continue to happen, just like the many murders that are happening, that police are committing on black and brown people every day. Nothing's going to change until we actually dismantle these systems and build new ones that are foundationally rooted in recognizing that racism exists, and all the isms exist, and how are we able to move forward differently? But we have to wipe away everything. We can't try to build a new house on a foundation of an old house that's been ran through and just looks like rubbish. We have to clear it out and really address things on a more broader scale, or we're going to continue to see this cycle happen for many more years.
You're so true. So right. You mentioned Dominguez Hills, and I have a lot of homies that went to Dominguez Hills.
Okay.
And on my recent, on another episode, he has said that people always say that Dominguez Hills, it could be an HBCU because so many of us attend that school. So when did you first get into activism, and was Dominguez Hills a part of that?
Absolutely. I'll say when I graduated high school, I was not thinking about education. It's kind of part of my testimonial. Like I was like, what college, whatever. But my mom actually graduated from Dominguez Hills. She got a liberal studies major, and she was like, "Nah, go to Dominguez, go to Dominguez." I was trying to move out. I was trying to leave, but just procrastinating. I chose Dominguez. So I always. I call it, speak of it like, Dominguez wasn't my first choice at all. But, when you're looking at how much it costs to go to these other colleges, you're like, all right, let me go to Dominguez. And once I got to Dominguez, it was an absolutely incredible experience. I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be in the positions I am to wherever, in the things that I do, if it wasn't for the foundational roots of education, my, kind of getting my training and activism and stuff. If it wasn't for Dominguez Hills, I mean, at Dominguez Hills, I was, active in the BSU. I became vice president my freshman year. I was nominated for that, and then moved on to do things such as if you go to the student union right now at Cal State Dominguez Hills, we have a Black Resource Center. I was one of the founders of that. That came at a time in 2016, 2017, when there was a lot of activism happening on campuses across the nation. And so me and 4 others, we created a list of demands, 10 demands, emulating the Black Panther Party and the 10-point plan. But essentially we brought it to our administration. And one of the things that are still standing because of that is the Black Resource Center. And then in my last year, when I graduated in 2018, I was student body president. So I was really active, and I really did other things such as mentor, not only in the school, but also a part of a program that we did a lot of mentoring to our Black and brown students, young men of color in middle schools, elementary, middle, and all the way to high school, really trying to make sure that they're prepared for college or whatever endeavor they want to do. College isn't the only option, although I'm a huge proponent of higher education without the student loans. And our federal government needs to get it together and cancel all student debt because it's severely impacting our communities, people who look like us. That's why people, millennials, Gen Z, however you want to categorize it, we can't buy homes because we're being weighed down by that. Anyway, that's another story. But just want to kind of just, end it off with saying, like, again, it was absolutely critical to, the type of work I'm in now. I think Dominguez Hills is a great university, and I really appreciate my time there. But I will say it was because I was just very active and I was being a part of everything. And so, and it being rooted where it's at, I always love talking about the history of Dominguez Hills. I mean, this institution was supposed to be in Palos Verdes. Think about that. And, because of the Watts Rebellion, it wasn't the Watts riots. I remember I was a freshman saying the Watts riots, my professor was like, it wasn't a riot. It was a rebellion to the institutionalized things that were being exacerbated in the communities. We want a university that is near our community, Compton, Watts, Wilmington, all the local surrounding communities, Carson, and that's why it was founded there. It was brought there because of that, and so to know its foundation of Dominguez Hills is really rooted in social justice. It's like an energy when you get there and you're actually moving things forward on that campus, because that's the bloodline of it. So absolutely, I love Dominguez Hills. It's a university I rep, till the day I die. And so absolutely my roots of activism and everything I do in the community started at Dominguez.
I can hear the passion in your voice.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a lot of passion.
Wow, how'd you know? Yeah,
I'm just into astrology, and Leos are very like fire energy. Kind of like cocky a little bit too, but it's like they. But they for the people though. They really for the people though.
I'm humble.
Yeah, that's good. Amen. But upon graduating from Cal State Dominguez Hills, so I went to San Jose State for a few years, so I'm kind of familiar with the Cal State type of life. I love it. Way more cheaper than out of state. Upon graduating college, though, how did you determine what to key in as far as an industry? What did you get your degree in as well?
Yeah, I got my degree in Africana Studies, which, for anybody who wants to kind of know what that means, is Africana kind of symbolizes this thing of, we're not just talking about Black people and our history in general, just humans started just in Africa, right? We were mobile, we moved, and we moved before the transatlantic slave trade, right? So we were in Brazil, we were in Europe, Black people were in Europe, right? Or what we know as Europe. But, we were everywhere, right? The Caribbean, South America, so Africana Studies is talking about the diaspora. And so that was my major. In terms of what I did after I graduated, it was really based off of my experience in student government. As I said, I graduated being our student body president that my last year in 2018. And, I remember advocating for many things going on. Like for example, there was, how we were trying to address, again, I was already coming off of talking about how we are addressing the plight of Black students on campus. And I will make this comment, although Dominguez Hills is recognized as the school in the state of California with the most Black student population, there's still a lot of institutional barriers and things that are, decreasing that rate, right? And so, for example, Dominguez Hills, student population makeup back in 2008, 2009, around that time, it's about 38, almost 40% Black people on campus, right? You fast forward to at least when I was there, I don't want to speak on what the percentage is now because I haven't been following it, but when I was there, it was probably looming around 11 to 12%. Right. And so we were always trying to address that, like, well, what is going on? I mean, it's a rhetorical, we know what's going on, but why is this not something we're looking at in terms of, disrupting a system that we know is pushing us out? And so, long story short, being in student government, being able to advocate for higher education, policies, being in public policy in that realm, going to the chancellor's office, going to Sacramento and going to DC and advocating for a lot of things that didn't even necessarily impact me half the time, right? Many of the policies, I'm in childcare right now. I'm in early education. I don't have a child, right? But I'll go up there and fight like I got 10 kids and I'm trying to make sure that they have the most affordable, high quality childcare that the state of California could provide them, right? And so I just love being able to take on things and be able to, whatever way I can be able to use my platform to be able to not only just speak on behalf of things, but bring other people to that table I was invited to and allow them to use their voice at that table, it's going to always be a win for me. And so student government, being involved at Dominguez in a lot of those different ways kind of informed how I kind of looked at what I want to do in a career. I will say, I still do, but, looking at, again, how these student loans going to look, I definitely want to go to law school. But as of now, I'm in public policy and government relations. And so, I love doing the work. It's a passion of mine. I come into work not looking like, oh, I'm at work, it's another day at the job. But, we really do this. And what I really love about the work I do this all day, every day, not just Monday through Friday, but on the weekend, I'm doing the same type of stuff. And so it's just kind of ingrained in me. It's something that's been internalized, this type of stuff that I fight for. It isn't something I just turn on and off. And so that's kind of how I found where I would get in my career. It was based off of my experience in specifically student government at Dominguez Hills right before I graduated, but also just, when I did my run for Compton City Council, I did really well. I won the primary, but didn't win the general election. But I remember just how much hope, younger people saw in me. Just a kid, I was looked at as a kid, just running like, oh, what, and so I was taken serious. And, a lot of people, younger and older, actually, I remember I was campaigning one day, and I remember someone had said, wow, like, I've lived here for 40 years in this neighborhood, and no one's ever come to my house to talk to me about voting or the elections and stuff. And so you earn my support and just, all around just because of that. And so I love being in the community. I love just interacting with people. So you could imagine the pandemic and being at home and all that. That wasn't my type of environment, but, obviously I get it. But I love being in the community. I love doing this type of work. And so that, coupled with my experience, coupled with my educational background, coupled with, my mom being an educator, I just love doing this type of work. And so that's why I'm here, and that's why I'll always remain in this type of space.
You're almost built to be that person for us, so it's really cool that, so you probably you were probably 23 or?
Yep, 23. I was actually
23. You see, young, going out there.
You spot on with everything today.
I mean, that did a good job.
Right.
But wow, like, what was your faith like for you to take that bold move?
Yeah, it was because I remember I had, when I was really considering it, I was just like, man, like I had some other programs I was going to be a part of that would have, looking back, in hindsight, I'm thinking, oh, well, I wonder what would happen if I, did this instead of ran. But I was really happy, with even the loss. And a lot of people, and I always love to share that experience. Like I love, it might sound crazy saying the same, but I love telling people about the experience of even losing. Because I don't feel like people are always kind of authentic about their experiences. You get on social media, everybody just broadcasts and they wins, and it's just kind of like it's fake, And so I love talking about my experience because I feel like that loss specifically, and also my losses just in general, the L's you take, it actually provided me more, insight into who I am and what I'm capable of, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and what, I'm able to really do. Like, I didn't know I was going to be able to do that. I didn't know I had that in me. And now fast forward, pretty much almost 4 years later, once 2023 gets here, I'm a totally different person. But I mean, even me then, I couldn't believe I got that far, and I had that much support. So I could only imagine, what it looks like now, because I'm much different. I've evolved so much. And so a loss really gives you that type of perspective. It humbles you. It makes you really look at a lot of things. And it was not easy at all. It was probably one of the most challenging times of my life that I'll always recall. But I'm so glad I went through it because it's made me much stronger. I haven't, a lot of people when they lose, especially like in a election or just something that's very public, You kind of see people kind of go back to the background and stuff. But I've been very present, very vocal. I've been taking on challenges and just trying to make sure people know I'm consistent about what I do. I'm always going to represent the city of Compton. I'm always going to represent even South LA. I'm going to represent my community. And so, I'm here. I'm here for the long haul. I'm here, not for a win, personally. I'm here to really kind of move things forward and push the needle because, I always say that our older generations, they need to do a lot better with passing the baton and really being able to, empower us as young people and empower that next generation who's going to do something. And so I'm grateful for those who are, those who have come before me and who have been able to do that. Don't get me wrong. I just wish we could see a lot more. But that's why, I'm not someone who's just going to complain, but I'm going to, now that I'm in a position and people are looking up to me, I try to make sure that any positions and any platforms I'm on, that I'm bringing other people with me, younger people, so I can empower them to do the same thing. And so that's the type of, kind of experience I'm having with life and just everything. But I mean, the loss was probably, again, looking back, was probably the best thing that happened because I've learned so much about myself. I've learned so much about what I'm capable of, what are things I need to work on, what are things that I'm really good at. And, it's just giving me a new light. And so, again, it wasn't easy at all. It isn't something that you can just, say that, hey, go through it and you'll get it. This is going to happen. I wasn't expecting any of that, but I'm really happy I did it. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And I know it's going to be something that I can hope my story, can help, someone else that are going through things that they may think that it's not their lane to do and, hold off, wait. No, go for it. So, yeah.
No, man, thank you for being real because, like you said, a lot of people don't want to be real, but the realness is what sticks, though. The realness is what resonates with people deeply because oh shoot. Okay.
You back?
So you good?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that. My computer got hot.
Yeah. Okay.
My YouTube in the
Great
background.
conversation. That's why it's heating up.
I know. Okay, we got 2 more minutes and we'll be done. But what was I saying? Dang, what was I saying? Do you remember? I was
Yeah,
saying,
we were talking about just, people and authenticity on, social
yeah.
media, being real. And yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the people need that, and I think just you being maybe a year or two older than me,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to see people in my circle, just being audacious and making bold moves because the revolution, it does start with the young people because the older we get, the more settled and we get a little bit tired, so that's when it's supposed to be happening. You're supposed to be making those bold moves, running for president, running for city council, doing stuff that people got you, looking at you like, who do you think you are? Huey P. Newton started the Black Panthers at 24 years old, that's pretty crazy, right? But he did it, and now we're able to talk about him. And you said with your own organization in college, you were using his points, his plan to guide y'all's revolution. So, yeah, I think this is the best time to just be like, do crazy stuff. But
Absolutely.
in addition to what you said earlier as well about the dwindling African American population at Cal State Dominguez Hills, I'm currently a board member for the Southwest College Foundation,
Oh, nice.
and yeah, thank you. And there, the same thing is happening with a lot of the Black students, and as well. Okay, so I went to Dorsey High School,
Okay.
and I recently had organized a Black History Month presentation virtually. So about 30 something classrooms were able to join and log in. And after that presentation, I learned that Dorsey High School had this program called the Black Student Achievement Plan. And this is the program at Dorsey that was able to support me with this presentation. So the
Mm,
Black Student Achievement Plan came about a few years ago or just recently. And it was created to address the needs of African American students because we were actually doing worse than the Latino students. And I think when I bring it up to my mother, who's Mexican, she's like, okay, well, why is that a bad thing? Like, they're both struggling. But I'm trying to explain to her, like, the reason why it's a problem, Mom, is because a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of Latinos have just came to the United States. So for African Americans to be in the same position with, in my opinion, other groups that have just arrived, it says a lot about what's going on, like, behind closed doors when it comes to Black students. And I think it may not even be like a evil person, you know, or an evil group. It could just be, maybe it's just anything to disempower people to discover how strong they are, who they are. Just kind of, when you bleed a community or people of their resources, they kind of like kill themselves and they die off. I don't know. It's just,
yeah,
what are you
yeah,
gonna
no,
say?
you're spot on. I mean, I even take it further to say, I mean, the education system, and I've seen it from the higher education lens and now in early education. This system isn't designed for people who look like you and I, even specifically more Black people. You know, although I'm like, I was rolling my eyes the whole time I was watching it. I always think it's just interesting that, because I'm an Africana studies major, so I have a very different perspective of history, but, you know, versus the mainstream of Western history. But I was watching this thing about, the beginning years of America and stuff like that. And it's just so interesting how they kind of depict things. But anyway, more specifically, they got to this part about the signing of the Declaration of Independence and all these different things going on. And, you know, you think about that time when, you know, we were enslaved. We were also, you know, you fast forward to even the 1800s, going into the early 1900s, and even to the 2020s. I mean, you see that these same systems that were created back then, you know, let's just even mark it by 1776. Obviously, things much more developed in America after that. But those systems were built without thinking of us in mind. You know, I mean, it's just these systems aren't built for us. And so for us to be able to recognize that and still achieve, that's a great story. That's a great thing to capture. But there's so many others who are fallen by the wayside because, you know, us as people who are consciously aware of what's going on, we try to do everything in our power to make sure that we're getting as many of our youth and just people in general, you know, so they don't fall victim to the system in the myriad of different ways they can. But again, it's only so many of us. And so it's going to be it's hard unless we look at, okay, well, now at this point, like I said earlier, we just got to knock the whole thing down. We have to dismantle so that we're able to really look at addressing the real needs. You know what I mean? Like I say, the college system right now, like I'll just even specifically focus on the CSU. Although, you know, I'm kind of focused on what's going on at Dominguez Hills. The CSU, just in general, is really terrible about how they're addressing the needs of Black students. And I could confidently say that because let's just look at the numbers, you know, and let's look at the fact that even when you have 10 Black students come in their freshman year, based off of historical data, based off even my own experience, you get 10, I'll just use the number 10, you know, maybe you'll get 2 that actually make it to their senior year and graduate. And maybe when I say senior year, maybe one of them actually graduates in 4 years because they had every resource. They were just, how I mentioned before, that one that was able to get through the system and be able to make it through. But maybe you have maybe the other 2 or, you know, or the other one, but I'll add another one in there that maybe graduates after 5, 6 years, right? Because of different things that have gone on. You know what I mean? And so it's not the person's fault, but it's the system. But what do? We blame the person. We blame the student versus looking at what's the environment that was created for that person or these people versus, what are they doing wrong, or what, it's looking at how do we pass the, look at who are we really shining a light on. And so in education, I think that we often give excuse for the system versus actually looking at the system as the reason for why all negative things are happening in Black students more specifically. And so when we can change our mindset into shifting it that way, I think then we as a system will start to really address the issues in a more intentional way than we have been before. But we all have to have that understanding.
No, collective understanding is important because I say now, like, communication includes comprehension. If someone doesn't comprehend or understand where you're coming from, why you're saying what you're saying, then it's just words, it's just spoken air. So I like that. You said we all have to be on the same page and hold the system accountable for everything being the way it is. So why early education? Of all things, like you said, you're not a father. Why early education? What's so important about that stage in a child's life?
Well, I argue that, that stage, if you invest...
Childcare, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, early education, I mean, it's all the same. So, yeah, you were right. But, because that's the investment you make early on, so that when you before you even get them into the K through 12 system, again, I'm talking, early education, our primary lens is 0 to 5, right? So when a child is born to 5 years old, before they enter the kindergarten and go through the whole entire system, right? And then once they're in the K through 12 system, they're dealing with other societal things that are going on in their lives. They may be, so you get that. And so the point, that we make in early education and childcare policy is that if you invest in a child in their very early ages, developmentally, emotionally, you support the parents in ways that they may need that support so that they can better be able to create an environment for that child or their children that are able to, kind of yield that support that they need. Then you don't have to make those investments. For example, in by the third grade, we know the whole school to prison pipeline thing. We're not making those type of investments, right? In the state of California, where we have, more prisons than colleges, right? If we were making the investment before, as they are young and developmentally still a sponge and able to take in information, we're able to put them in environments where they're actually succeeding, we won't have to face those type of things later on. And so that's why I'm very passionate about how we are addressing things for our children. Many of the issues that people are facing today, in mental health, in education, failing out of classes and all these different things going on. That's why I say I don't like to put the blame on the person. I mean, we all could share the blame, right? But that's not solely their problem, right? It's because our system has failed us early on. This person could have been, we could have recognized it earlier and provided this person with the resources they needed so they can be very successful later on in life. And you can recognize these things in that 0 to 5. And so, and then say nothing, say that they did all they need to do, but maybe it's the parent that is trying to struggle on, how are we able to, how am I going to be able to feed this child or pay for rent? Maybe I got to pay for rent. So that means my child is not going to be able to eat today. And so they go to school tomorrow and they're not learning. They're not thinking about learning because they didn't have anything to eat last night, which means they also didn't do their homework, so how are we able to support people, the whole family, the whole child? That's one of the kind of approaches we talk about. Is how do we do that? How do we support them with all these wraparound resources so that people, not only the child is very successful, which is, the most critical thing, but also we're putting parents in the right position to, have that high quality, affordable childcare so they can go to work, so that they can go to school if they choose to, right? And do the things that they need to do so they can put their child and themselves in a better positions to thrive in this society that we live in today. Currently, right now, our system isn't allowing that. And, it's kind of, it's kind of unfortunate because, as us in this space, in early education and childcare policy, as many times as we're trying to sound the alarm and make more people aware of this, it's kind of hard if you're not, dealing with it, so it's a issue that if you're not dealing with childcare affordability issues, or you don't have children in general, or any of these different things, then you're not thinking about these issues, and then you get through the K through 12 system. You look at some of our kids that may be put in positions where they're looked at as truant, or bad, or all these negative things, right? But looking at it from my angle, I'm like, well, if we were investing in them early on, in those developmental years, providing them with the high quality services they need, not only them but their parent, we wouldn't even be having this discussion in the K through 12 system and after they graduate high school.
No, thank you, Justin, for using your voice for the voiceless, for people who can't get on here and, speak and run for city council and just be in the places that I know you're at. When I'm hearing you talk, like Leos also really do know their shit too. So that's another thing I want to point out. Leos are like, anything that they're passionate about, they're going to break it down for you.
On it.
But what you're doing the Lord's work. If that's who you believe in, you
Absolutely.
are a healer. The people that I read about in my book, Sacred Woman by Queen Afua, talks about healers and being a healer of your community, whether it's through food, through message, through your voice, through writing, through art. You are one of those people. So I wanted to just acknowledge that on here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But yeah, in developing Justin, the man, the human, what has been the most challenging for you?
Yeah, that's a powerful question. I think for me, as I've grown up, because I'm still growing, at this age as a Black man in America, looking at how am I always tell people this, and I use my own advice, especially a lot more nowadays, is, I know that there's things I can't control. And every day I walk out my house and I live this world through the vision of a Black male in America, young Black male in America, but I am in control of things and only focus on things that I can control, so how am I being, how am I holding myself accountable? So self-accountability. How am I very aware of what I'm doing? So self-awareness, how am I recognizing my strengths and my weaknesses? How can I recognize the things that I need to do to self-improve? And so just in terms of my development and how I am as Justin, who I am today, is just being more critical about that. But, of course, giving myself that grace to obviously, it's not going to happen overnight. But I think people, when they recognize, and, myself, when you recognize and you're able to call out things like that, you're moving toward the right direction. And so, my philosophy amongst the many philosophies I have is, don't worry about things you can't control, because you can't control them. I leave it up to the universe and God, our supreme deities. And I just move in the things that I can control. And so I can control things that I'm doing and the way I'm thinking, the knowledge I take in, the people I'm impacting, the relationships I'm building, and all, the whole, thing, everything that's going on. So I just like to be able to focus on that, and, kind of move forward that way. And that's pretty much how I'm kind of in this space now. And it's worked so far. But I'm always, looking to, one thing I am is a lifelong learner. I know you said the thing, Leos, we act like we know everything, but, there's things that I know based off of my experience that no one can tell me, and maybe this is the Leo in me, right? No one can tell me about my experience, and how I feel about things. However, those who have come before me, those who are in similar situations and so on and so forth, I listen to that. And I take what I can from it and I use it and apply it to my life. Or I take information in and pass it on to another person, because I think that's very critical too. My life mission, people are like, oh, what's your career goals and all this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't really necessarily have career goals. I really want to be able to impact our communities, and, whether that's through law, which I've already started doing. I'm paralegal, but whether it's through law, whether it's through my current profession, policy and government relations type work. I'm in different organizations that we do, in a fraternity. What I mean? So I'm whatever way I can impact the community, that's a win for me. And so, if it's being an elected official at some point, then that's how we're going to do it. But that's my biggest ultimate goal, is to make a real impact, not only in our local community, but our global community as well, and really inspire our next leaders. Because when I saw people that inspired me and watched how they moved, it really gave me that spirit of really wanting to be able to do something as well. And so if I can be able to do that for at least one person that then changes the world themselves, then I feel like that's a win. And so that's what I'm really focused on. I'm really focused on things I can control. I'm really focused on things that will allow me to impact our world, our local community, and really be able to really move that, like I keep saying, move the needle forward. Nothing's going to change in our lifetime. I hate to sound cynical, because it didn't happen in our lifetime. A lot of the many different injustices that our people have been faced with for not only just 400 years, but much longer than that. And so I recognize that it won't be us that necessarily changes it, but how do we pass the baton so that we can continue this work, so we can be able to change the tide, and how we're able to dismantle these systems. Our people ain't ready yet to dismantle just yet, but we're going to get there. And I think that it's important that we continue to have these uncomfortable conversations with one another, not only in the Black community, not only in the Latino community, but all of our counterparts in every community. Because if we're not educating ourselves, if we're not hearing about our lived experiences, talking about our cultures and our similarities and differences, then we'll never move forward. And once we get there, I think that's when we'll start to really see progress. Is when we come together. And I think unity. I'm big on unity, consensus, coming together, because I think that's how we're able to achieve anything that we want to. Being siloed out, being over here and they over there and stuff like that, we're gonna never solve any of our problems. But we are going to move things forward as we come together, and I want to be a part of that. And so I just try to do my best to not just complain, obviously, right, but actually be a part of the solution, so that we are moving things forward for our people.